This is Becoming Inclusive from the Kaleidoscope Group, where we're thinking differently about diversity, equity, and inclusion for more empowered people at work. We're committed to real change, and that begins with real conversations. Welcome in.
Hi, I'm Reggie Ponder, and welcome to another episode of Becoming Inclusive. I'm your host, but that's your co-host, Catherine Potts. Hey, Kat.
Hey.
And then we get to do what we love to do is we love to talk to Mitch Brown. And we don't just like to talk to Mitch Brown because it's fun. We like to talk to Mitch Brown because it's educational, it's informative, and it's provocative because he don't just say the things that you want him to say. So I always appreciate that, Mitch. Welcome back, man.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Kat, Reggie, it's always a pleasure.
And so Mitch, we were talking because this month is Women's History Month, and we were talking a lot about inclusive benefits, and particularly inclusive benefits as it relates to women. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that you are a new father and your wife is a new mother. So congratulations before we get into talking about inclusive benefits.
Thank you so much. Shout out to my son, Brixton King Brown.
Hey.
I wish nothing but success and health in the world for that young man. But thank you, Reggie, for those kind words.
Mitch, you're going to make me tear up and we haven't even started. Come on, man.
Yeah, you did something for me today. So you talking about thanks. You did something for me today because you let me see the little guy, and I really appreciate that. So thanks again. But getting back to this whole thing about inclusive benefits, I want to start off just a bit because one of my hangups, and we talked about this in another podcast, one of my hangups, Mitch, has been how come we cannot fix this whole inequity in pay? And I know we'll talk about a number of things as it relates to benefits, but the number one thing on my mind is always pay, because I don't get it. I just think that it's probably the easiest thing to fix that there is. You say, okay, I got this man doing this job, I got the women doing this job, they're doing the exact same job, they have the exact same title, but I'm going to pay them 82 cents to the dollar. And if they're a person of color, maybe 66 cents to the dollar. That really gets under my craw. So I'm going to start there because I know that's an issue for you as well.
Yeah, it's actually, I think we've talked about pay equity before, probably in another form. And I think given that it is, the month that we're in, I think we would be remiss not to bring some continuity to this conversation because it is still a problem that I believe is pervasive. In pay equity, when you look at some of the gender dynamics of inclusion in the workplace, is a place where there is a lot of work to do. And I would say step number one is to know where you stand on that. Because I think if you're an organization and, you have a lot of, gender diversity throughout your ranks, and you have people who are, arguably doing this, similar jobs at the same job levels and pay bands, and then you don't know the answer to that question, I think, Reggie, that's problem number one. So, I would encourage people, if you're doing employee engagement surveys, if you're doing focus groups, if you're making any effort to hear from your constituents and you're talking to, those of your constituents that, are female and identify as female, ask about that, right? Because otherwise, Reggie, listen, we're hopeful, we're wishful. We may say the right things, but we got to make sure the proof is in the pudding.
And I feel like you can also risk not getting certain talent through the door if you're sort of like lowballing, as they say, women, offering them much lower than what you may offer a male. And you could really pass by someone that could be really effective and transformational for your company.
I love it. And that brings something that I think is important here when we talk about benefits. Reggie, you asked about that. I think it's about taking a vested interest in the personal development of all of your stakeholders based upon what their unique needs are. So I think women, I think people of color, I think younger generational people when it comes to pay and compensation. Doing some development about how to have those conversations. I'll give you one little tidbit now that I've read and learned in the past couple of weeks. A lot of times when it comes to that conversation, people will always ask, well, what do you want? A good counter question is, what is the budget? Right? Because, that'll give you an idea of where you should, be, and make sure that you're not lowballing yourself, right? Or you're not engaging in any type of, I think, unfair practice. Because, Kat, to your point, I think a lot of times that's what happens, in those conversations. Right. Organizations might say, well, hey, this person didn't ask for this, right? But are you negotiating in good faith, right? Or in good faith, meaning are you consistent with the values and principles that you have around inclusion and diversity? If you don't take some efforts to develop people along that way.
So this is a really good point, Mitch. And so I actually, so your CEO, Doug Harris, talks about how you have to be responsible for your own development and be responsible for your own growth. And I buy that. I buy that 100%. You need to understand what to ask for. You need to try to understand the whole situation. And I buy what you just said in terms of if you're a corporation that has certain values and then you consistently lowball women, there's something wrong with what you say and what you're doing. Because if you're saying that I'm for inclusion, and you see it because you know what the pay scale looks like, and yet you don't do anything to correct it, I think it's problematic. So I agree with Doug that there are things individually that you need to do. And I agree with you that these companies have to look and see if they're actually performing toward their visions, their mission, and their values.
I agree. I'm rather in a place of unilateral critique. I think it definitely is a both and sometimes I think organizations don't hold themselves accountable as much as they want individuals to be responsible for where they are. I think it has to be a little bit more balanced there. Sorry, go ahead, Kat.
No, I was going to say, and I think to your point, the accountability is on both sides because yes, I'm in control of asking for what I want, but sometimes that response from a potential employer can almost make you feel like, why did I even do that? Why did I even ask for what I wanted? Because the response to that is almost like in shock, or why did this person say that number? It's so high, or then you end up regretting the whole thing. So that authenticity from the employer side of being like, I really want to know what you think you're worth, has to come through authentically.
Mm-hmm. And if you're in the business of what we do, right, inclusion, and again, I said you need to be aware of these things, I think you should get the historical context around what we're saying too, right? You can understand why, somebody may have some trepidation around that kind of conversation. Oh, I've heard people say, I'm just happy to be here, happy to have a job, right? Or, I don't want them to not choose me, right? And working against those kind of feelings is real. And I would argue, if you tell an individual to, you're responsible for where you, kind of end up here in a place like this, you are aware of that. And again, Reggie, I think, what separates the most inclusive organizations from just the run-of-the-mill average organizations is the notion that I see an inequity that is taking place based upon what we're talking about, right? Pay equity. And I'm going to do something to resolve why that inequity exists. And to me, right, that kind of development on the organizational side, that kind of coaching, that kind of frowning upon operating or negotiating in bad faith, right? I think that is some of the stuff that has to happen for that to be real for organizations.
I love the fact that we're talking about equity because earlier in our private conversation, you brought in this whole issue of insurance. And when we talk about equity, it's not like we do the same thing for everybody. When we talk about equity, we do the things that the people need. And you were talking about just basic insurance for women employees. Talk a little bit more about that. What was your thinking?
Yeah, and I don't want to limit the thinking to insurance. I'll go broader and just talk about benefits because I do know in this conversation, it's a very comprehensive thing to kind of talk about, right? Because some people may say, "Hey, I work at a place and I don't offer insurance," right? Well, okay, but maybe you work at a place and you offer floating holidays, or you offer paternity and maternity leave, right? Or you offer a myriad of different things where what my encouragement is to, again, think about your constituents, right? And think about, does everybody you know afford have the ability to again take advantage of those benefits in the way that's most optimum to them. And to give the example, right? We were talking insurance, right? If you are a family of two, three, I grew up in again, a family of single family of my mother and myself. And Reggie, I don't know about you, but because I just had a son, right? I'm looking at some of these insurance premiums, right, and what they cover, and what that means for somebody who is single versus a family. Which you can, again, and this may not be something that's, again, I'm anecdotally saying this, but I bet you if you looked at some empirical data, most of the time when you talk about a family, unless it's a nucleus family, right, mother, father, and child, that child's probably going to be with that mother, right? So that burden of that healthcare costs, again, may be falling disproportionately on your female population. If you look at how much of that's costing them, right, versus the value of what they're getting, are you having those kind of conversations? What they need, right? And is that consistent and being supported by, things like listen, in the space of maternity leave, and you're looking at, what might be required by law in terms of FMLA. If I'm an organization, again, and you hear me, and my tone is focused a lot on organizations and institutions, because I believe they sit uniquely to create equity based upon, again, the power that they wield. I'm going to go over and beyond what's required if I'm truly inclusive in that space. And I'm going to go over and beyond what's required if I'm listening to my, female counterparts to say, hey, you know what? Honestly, a month off, 2 months off, whatever the bare minimum might be. Again, I'm just speaking anecdotally here. That's not enough. I need a little bit more.
I disagree.
Right?
I have to stop. I have to jump in because I agree so wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
Wholeheartedly. And when we compare sometimes these benefits to other countries, and we're supposed to be one of the greatest countries in the world, particularly as it relates to maternity leave, a lot of companies are so far ahead of us in terms of really taking care of the needs of mothers.
Well, for me to kind of interrupt, having had a son like a year ago, a big missing part of it is that they don't think about the recovery process for the mother. Like, of course, you're trying to take care of your child, but the mental and physical toll that it takes on a woman to carry a baby to term, and then what happens afterwards, and then to expect a mother to come back to work and perform at the same level as they did before they were pregnant is honestly a little insane to kind of call a spade. And then to also put back some mothers in a corner where they'll say like, okay, we'll give you half pay, or we're not going to pay you at all. Now you're adding a level of stress to someone that just like created a life with help of dad, of course, but brought them into the world, and then you're going through your own thing as the mom and trying to figure out parenthood, all that stuff, to then say you need to come back in 2 to 3 weeks and you need to be at the top of your game. And if not, we're not going to pay you. If you take more time off, then you can't take care. Like, it's so crazy. And to think that we live in a world where we're talking about equality and equity, and then just at that, you're not even thinking about the toll. You're basically, I think some moms would agree with me that you're basically pregnant and your body is not your own for like 2 straight years.
Listen, to me, it's also.
I think your wife could agree.
Yeah. She certainly can. And Reggie, speaking of Doug, you mentioned Doug a while back, and I've learned a lot from Doug Harris. And we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion as we do as a matter of the mind. What can you understand and know? Matters of the hand. What do you do? Skillfully demonstrate. But then another portion is a matter of the heart, like who you are, right? And I think a lot of times when it comes to conversations like this, if I thought about my sister, if I thought about my mother, and I thought about, how can I best meet their needs when I think about, the workplace, right? And you don't have this like stark distinction between a business mentality and a true sense of altruism for other people. I think we can narrow the gap in a lot of different places. And I hope, my challenge to individuals is, what can you do to make sure we're showing up, better than we can in that space.
And just really quick, I have to interrupt. Club 2 talks about, empathy for more than just the people you love, right? Having empathy for people that you don't love, and that not just being obviously outside of work, but professionally. Because this other point, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, is wellness looks different for different people. Mm-hmm. So if we are showing empathy for even people we may not love, then we'll be able to better cater to the nuances of that and how that can look different for different people and how to create that equity for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this, when we talk about just benefits overall, there's this thought that providing more doesn't help my business. And I would argue that, and we hear this anecdotally, at least I do, about that discretionary time. How much extra time will I give a corporation, a company, an employer, based upon how I feel about them? So when I feel you're squeezing me, you will not get my discretionary time. But when I feel that you're trying to meet the needs of what I'm doing, and Kat, I think you just really laid out so well about all the things that happen from a motherhood perspective. And I'm so glad. I thought you were gonna. I had
to represent for my mamas out there. You know what I'm saying?
I thought you might miss the whole mental piece, because people just dismiss that. So you talked about the physical and actually being at work and the time off, but you also talked about the mental piece, and people kind of just dismiss, be like, oh, just come back to work and do what you got to do. I think that what you do is you create employees that don't have as much goodwill, that don't have as much, you don't have as much money in the bank with them. So when you look at that discretionary time, and I'm just speaking anecdotally, Mitch, so I might be off, but that's just my thinking on that.
No, I mean, listen, I'm totally, I understand, and maybe I don't fully understand because I don't sit in that seat. I think another thing about, this conversation is seeking to understand a perspective different from your own. So even from the perspective we're coming, if I'm a business person, I'm thinking about, how do I run a business, right? I'm a business person and I'm in business. And I'm probably successful because of, the things I do to that. And to that end, maybe benefits are going to be contrary to, the bottom line or cost, right? Obviously, cost is a lot that goes into some of these calculations. Maybe it's about operational excellence or efficiency, whatever it is. I'm sure people aren't just like in a place of where they're not, doing these things because they just don't want to or out of malice. I don't assume that. I assume good about everybody. But I think it's about, two things. Three things. I think it's about being competitive. I think, out here in the marketplace, the companies who are figuring this out as well as doing well in business are the ones that are going to be, to the top of the top. I think it's about what we said earlier, Reggie, somebody who purports to be something, that your actions are going to be consistent with your words. And in our business, I can tell you right now, being diverse, being inclusive have been buzzwords for a long time. And, you can't just use them to catch fish, but you got to also use it to cultivate fish, right? So you can't, again, you got to be consistent with how you're showing up. And I think ultimately, it's just about, investing in your people. And anybody will tell you that, nobody as a matter of fact, gets in anywhere without, the help of others. So for far too long, I think in this scenario, in this equation, if you listen to your people, back to my original point, there are some ways we can improve how we're showing up with our sisters and, our female colleagues and others who are, again, in the spirit of Women's Month, like, there are a lot of room for us to show up in better ways, and I think that is what it's all about. And yeah, anytime I might do something in the interest of doing something else, right, I might have to compromise on, oh, this is going to cost me a little bit more, right? But you got to look at the opportunity cost of not doing it. And you really got to think about, again, the gains to be had when you do it the right way.
I love that. And Kat, any thoughts on what Mitch just said there?
Yeah, my thoughts are just, and would you agree, Mitch, that if a business makes the lives of their employees a little bit better, their employees' output may be just that much better, right? If you're coming in with less worry because they're helping you, then you could be more effective.
For sure. I mean, I used to work at Gallup, and I know there's a lot of empirical data and studies out there, at least done by them as an authority, around our relation to, engaged employees and productivity. But you can Google this stuff. I mean, it's well-founded science behind it. So not only does it just make a lot of common sense, right, Kat, when you say it, but, anybody who's tuned in with this stuff, it makes a lot of sense, for sure.
Do you think, Mitch, that the pandemic has helped as it relates to benefits related to women? I do, particularly as it relates to working at home.
You know what? That's a great question, Reg. It's a great question. I knew you had some good questions over there. I knew he had some good questions over there, that notepad. That is actually, Reggie, it's funny you should say that. In my clients, I'm having these conversations now about, what does the next a month or two look like? I'll tell you this, a lot of you out there may be experiencing this as well. There is a migration back to the physical workplace. And I'm not going to lie, I'm all for it, because I was a person who was on the move. I traveled. I come to your place of business, do my work. And, while we pivoted to a virtual sense, I'm a people person. I get my energy from the sun and from others. So I do like that. But Reggie, to your point, what flexibility looks like now is because when people have seen that, what, I could do my work from home, right? And that helps me out. That means that I don't have to necessarily hire childcare for, as long. That means that, hey, something as, benign as, hey, I don't have to spend money on eating out every day. I could eat within the comfort of my own home. Or heck, listen, some of us aren't early birds. I can roll out of bed 10 minutes before my meeting, as long as I'm prepped and ready to go, and I don't have to worry about a commute time. And, I've seen organizations and some of my clients say, hey, we recognize that. You appreciate that. So we're going to flex on that requirement. Well, if we really need you here, we can have you here 2 out of the 5 days, right? You can stay home 3 days. Sometimes it's up to you, right? Whatever it may be. But that in itself, and I think the agility that we saw within the marketplace when it came to COVID-19, you better believe it. I think it's helped us be more agile in other spaces, for sure.
It's really interesting. So I to that little piece to that, I guess I'll try to end up on is that I also think that workers seeing other workers at home had a immense effect, and particularly since we're talking about Women's History Month, is that when you see the kid have to walk in while they're working, you gain a different kind of perspective about the duties and demands, and people gave grace for that. And I think that's better for the workplace overall. Would you not say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, I'll be honest. Again, I got a newborn. And as Kat said, I'm very appreciative of my wife and, what she does every day. And I think I'll be honest with you, a lot of men, at least me, I don't want to speak for everybody. I don't think you have a true appreciation of what that looks like on a day in, day out basis, especially, Reggie, to your point, if in the normality of things, we're leaving the house, going to the office, right? We come back home, and, listen, magically people have been fed, diapers have been changed, all that kind of stuff. So, but if you got to be home, in the thick of it, and then even to your point, Reggie, if I can observe it and be like, oh, wow, listen, like, it's going to be hard to juggle kids and doing this at home and stuff too. Because remember way back, in the, listen, the pandemic's been like 24 months way back. Kids were also not in school, right? So
That's right.
we had that period of time where not only did you were responsible for working at your job, but you also had to educate and make sure your kids were on a schedule, so to speak, if your kids were in school. So listen, you're right. I hope that has, opened some eyes. I hope that that's given people some kind of, something to not take for granted, for sure.
I'll say too, for me, obviously I took maternity leave, but then also being able to be in the home even after that with my son and being able to be around him for like his entire life so far, 1+ years, like that has given me a gift that allows me to still be able to show up for work and everything and keep me motivated. But I feel it's made me very grateful for my job and wanting me to, like, my output's even better. And I'm like more motivated even now to work even harder for KG because they gave me a gift of being able to like watch that most people don't get. Like my son has gotten to be with his mom and his dad every day for his whole life thus far. Like that's so rare, and I see the impact that it's on him and the impact it has on us. So that's another perspective that I think other people can relate to if they're in that situation, because some mothers, some dads don't get it. First of all, I want to give a shout out to my dads too, because I know we're talking about women, but dads out there also deserve appropriate paternity leave. But
I don't give us nothing.
I'm sorry. I gotta say, I gotta do that, but I'm gonna
don't give us nothing because Mitch just got through saying, and I agree with him. You come home and you be like, oh, baby fed, diapers done. You be like,
no, but I think that my point is that men also deserve appropriate paternity leave. And that also helps the mother too, because that's another, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but that's another thing too. A lot of dads that I know how to go back to, didn't get any paternity leave or how to go back to work a week later. That's a really big burden on the mother, even if she's needed most in the initial stages. So it's even little stuff like that where it's assumed like, oh, it's fine, I'm sure the mom has maternity leave. That's a lot of pressure, especially for first-time moms, that is not considered initially.
Wow. Well, we started this off talking about this is good. I that's why I love having these conversations. And we started off talking about benefits, and I think we stayed true to that. And we really talked about the impact of not having empathy, not having understanding, and I think Mitch, you threw in this whole thing of not having that heart to really try to say, what do my people need? What do they need to be successful? And I'm just really happy that we talked about this, and there's so much that we can talk more about. Mitch, I want to give you, and in this order, you and Kat, the last word on this as we wrap it up. So I'm gonna swing it to you.
Yeah, when Kat reached out to me, we were prepping for this, and we were talking a little bit about what's important, or what's coming out in terms of the top of the conversation from clients right now. There were several different things we talked about. But in this moment, I thought about, hey, here we are in March. A lot of my clients are talking about, Women's History Month. And I thought we should dedicate some time today to have that conversation. And I just want to encourage everybody out there to be an ally, to be an advocate for, gender inclusion in the workplace. Because I'll tell you this, and I think I've told this story once before, so I'll tell it to this group. If you think about, being an ally, or being an advocate, or being somebody who's uniquely situated in a position to, help an aggrieved party, think about women's suffrage, right? And you think about the right to vote for women. And if you look at Congress at that time, or the legislative body, there's probably well, guess what? No women. So some men had to take it upon themselves, had to, be incumbent upon, hey, listen, there's a grievance here, and we're in a position to do something about it. And we're going to listen to our fellow citizens in this democracy who may not be getting the full fruits of their labor or disenfranchised in some kind of way, right? And I'm going to take the opportunity to use my position to do something for the greater good. We need advocates, we need allies, because without that, I think we will find ourselves next March having a similar conversation without any type of progress. So that's my challenge to all of you. And again, it was a pleasure always connecting with Kat and Reggie, but those are my last words. All right,
hey, Kat, you got the last word.
Yeah, I mean, Mitch just took everything I was going to say. So no, I'm just kidding. I obviously really personally appreciate this conversation. And I think the other part of what I was hearing through what Mitch was saying was this emphasis on unity, right? If we can come together, we can elevate each other, right? So that's sort of where my mind's at. And other than that, I mean, mic drop to Mitch. You really killed it with that. Everything you just said, I think you hit it all.
And what I take away from this is that we have 2 men and 1 woman having this discussion, but that Mitch, I think you hit it on the nail on the head. Is that we need men involved in this discussion. That men have to be involved and not just having the discussion, but I like the whole thing about what are you doing with your hands? Are you actively in there actually doing something to create this equity in these spaces? So I appreciate both of you guys. Thanks so much, Kat. I'm really happy always to have you on as the co-host, and then Mitch, really glad to have you on as well. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time. This is Becoming Inclusive. It is a process. We're not there. We're working toward it, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for joining us, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Becoming Inclusive is presented by the Kaleidoscope Group, your full-service diversity, equity, and inclusion partner serving clients worldwide. Learn more and continue the conversation at kgdiversity.com.